In an era when dogfights are decided with long-range missiles, one plane roars into battle with an extra edge. The F-8 Crusader lights up the skies of Vietnam in legendary turn-and-burn air combat, earning the title of the Last Gunfighter. Using state-of-the-art computer animation, you're in the cockpit as the powerful F-8 Crusader slugs it out with the deadly MiG-17. Experience the battle. Dissect the tactics. Relive the dogfights. May 19th, 1967. 12 F-8 Crusader fighters streak towards Hanoi, the communist capital of North Vietnam. The Crusaders escort two A-4 bombers, which are mounting the Vietnam War's first strike inside downtown Hanoi. The A-4s will unleash the new television-guided walleye missile on the city's thermal power plant. Commander Paul Spear, an experienced pilot on his 150th mission, leads the fighters.
The whole idea was to get the A-4s, the two A-4s, in there on the target and get them out. We knew it was important to get the walleyes in there, and it was a snarling place to go over Hanoi.
With only 44 MiGs in their Air Force in 1967, the North Vietnamese have deployed these fighters sparingly. But today is different. The Communists will use every weapon they have to defend their capital.
We figured that if we were going to go there, they were going to come up and challenge us.
Crusader pilots like Lieutenant Phil Wood welcome the challenge.
We were looking for encounters. We were begging. We would go to bed at night and pray, say, please let me get involved with the MiGs. Well, they wouldn't come out.
As they cruise into Hanoi airspace, Phil Wood spots a U.S. Navy A-6, part of a diversionary bombing mission. He's fleeing the target area with a MiG-17 right on his tail.
The MiG was in the saddle, ready to shoot, I think, because he was right there.
Wood must get on the MiG's tail. He kicks in his afterburner and swings his nose 180 degrees to the left.
And I had this buck fever, you know, first time.
He fires too soon. The heat-seeking Sidewinder loses lock in turns higher than 2 Gs. The MiG spots the missile trail and pulls hard right.
And the MiG broke off the A-6, and he heads for the deck. He turns to the right, and he's descending an afterburner. I'm chasing this guy away from Hanoi. We're down on the treetops, and I'm right on his tail, and I'm gunning. I have to actually lower the nose to get the pipper on him. Well, guess what that does? I'm now descending into the top, so I can only fire a short burst, get back up and do it again. I could see some of the shells hitting the wings because they sparkle when they hit. And I'm so hungry to kill this guy, I forgot what my primary mission was. Now, I should be out there protecting the A-4s. So I broke off, and I headed into the Hanoi base.
Meanwhile, the A-4s pull out of their attack run and head for home.
That was their only mission left in life now, was to get out to the water and get back to the ship.
But suddenly, a squadron of MiG-17s streak in behind the American formation. Commander Paul Spear and his men break away to engage the MiGs. The F-8s and MiGs close on each other. The last gunfighter's lethal reputation will soon be put to the test. With the arrival of the supersonic age in the early 1950s, the U.S. Navy needed a heavily armed carrier-based jet fighter capable of breaking the sound barrier. In June of 1953, Chance Vought Aircraft won the contract to design and build the new fighter. Within 2 years, the first prototype F-8 Crusader was airborne. Equipped with a Pratt & Whitney J57 engine, the new plane was fast. On its maiden flight, it broke the sound barrier. Soon after, it became the first American plane to top 1,000 miles per hour. On July 16, 1957, an F-8, piloted by future astronaut John Glenn, set the transcontinental speed record, streaking from Los Angeles to New York in 3 hours, 23 minutes. The plane was not just fast, it was maneuverable and versatile. A fine dogfighter that could also serve as a bomber and photo reconnaissance plane. In fact, an F-8 snapped incriminating intelligence photographs during the Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1957, the Crusader was deployed to the aircraft carrier fleet and quickly established itself as the Navy's premier air superiority fighter.
The Crusader was a landmark aircraft. It was a tremendously capable dogfighter. In fact, pilots were fond of saying, when you're out of F-8s, you're out of fighters.
Loaded for combat, the F-8 could still reach 1.5 times the speed of sound and climb to 40,000 feet. The J57 engine was so powerful that the plane could climb at an unprecedented 21,000 feet a minute.
I fell in love with the engine because so many times it saved me. It pulled me out of deep trouble. It could withstand all sorts of abuse, and Crusader pilots abused that engine probably more than we should have. They call it graceful degradation. It's a fancy buzzword, but it's an important one. And that is a very important factor in a tactical airplane. It can take battle damage and continue to operate.
When pilots strapped into a Crusader, they knew they were at the controls of a thoroughbred dogfighter, capable of downing enemy aircraft with missiles and guns.
They like to say that it was the last of the gunfighters because with its 20mm cannon, it was really the only close-in fighter that the Navy had for the entire Vietnam War.
The other fighter in the Navy's fleet was the F-4 Phantom, which was a 2-seater and was armed with only missiles. When Lieutenant Phil Wood finished his stateside training and was given his choice of the two fighters, he picked the Crusader.
And I said, you know, I'm a gunfighter. I'm a fighter pilot. I want to have an airplane all by myself, and it had a reputation for being a kick and take names.
May 19, 1967. That reputation is tested as never before. With a squadron of MiG-17 streaking in, Commander Paul Spear and his Crusaders splinter off and target their own MiGs. The fight quickly escalates, and the airspace above Hanoi turns into a swirling furball. flak, anti-aircraft fire, and the main event, Crusaders and MiGs in full throttle aerial combat. Paul Speer is in the middle of this chaos. He twists his head to the left and spots a MiG at his 7 o'clock, closing fast. Speer turns into his attacker. Soon the combatants are locked together in a rolling dogfight. A single mistake could mean the difference between life and death. May 19, 1967. A squadron of F-8 Crusaders, the Navy's only gunfighter, fly escort for A-4 bombers on the first U.S. bombing raid on downtown Hanoi. MiG-17s are scrambled to attack the retreating Americans. Paul Speer soon finds himself locked in a complex aerial maneuver with one of these MiGs. It's called a rolling scissors. In a scissors, pilots cross canopy to canopy, reverse their turns, and cross again, over and over, each trying to position their nose behind the enemy's tail for a shot.
The feeling then is that you're going to get him, you know, and you're going to take that F-8 and turn it every which way Sunday to get behind him.
The maneuver makes it nearly impossible for the MiG to get an effective cannon shot. The aircraft cover 1 mile every 3 seconds as they close.
You're constantly pulling G's, constantly working, rolling the airplane. And bear in mind also that you're trying to look, and so you're constantly twisting your body back and looking. You're constantly moving around in the cockpit.
As they descend, the much lighter MiG-17 is able to pull tighter turns than the heavier Crusader. He'll eventually get on Speer's 6 o'clock. Speer must break out of the scissors.
I remember thinking, that guy's intent upon killing me as much as I'm intent upon killing him.
On the next turn reversal, he pitches up in a high G climb, breaking out of the MiG's fight, going vertical where the Crusader's powerful engine will even the odds. Speer is now perched above the MiG, waiting for the next move. The MiG rolls back, expecting to see Speer still in the scissors.
I think when he rolled back then, expecting me to be here, I wasn't there. And it got him startled for a minute because he rolled his wings level, and I know he was taking a look around. And he lit his afterburner, and then he dove for the deck. And of course that sets me up, because when he did that, he's ending up in front of me.
Speer and his wingman nose down and draw a bead on the MiG-17.
I fired a missile, but I hardly saw it because the G's on the airplane, the missile separated and immediately went ballistic, and it didn't track at all. Then I kind of settled down a little bit and pulled around, and I realized that I was in range, and I fired a second Sidewinder, which went up and detonated by his tailpipe.
The Sidewinder streaks in at twice the speed of sound, shredding the MiG's tail.
The expanding rod warhead on the missile got him and took his tail off. He ended up rolling over and going into the ground in a fireball.
If it found its target, the heat-seeking Sidewinder could be devastating. It was often fitted with an expanding rod warhead, which consisted of yard-long steel rods that, on detonation, would fan out into a giant spinning steel ring. The missile only had to get close for the rods to buzzsaw through the enemy aircraft.
I was a fighter pilot in Korea, and I was a fighter pilot a long time, but this is the first time you do what people think fighter pilots do all the time.
It is Commander Paul Spear's first kill, an exhilarating achievement against a worthy adversary. The MiG-17 was a full generation older than the Crusader. Due to its longer wing and taller tail, it had much greater stability at near supersonic speeds than its predecessor, the MiG-15. It was also the first Soviet fighter equipped with an afterburning engine, the Klimov VK-1F. Crusader pilot Paul Gilchrist flew a captured MiG-17 to detail its flight characteristics for the Defense Department.
The MiG-17 is a wonderful turning airplane at speeds below 450 knots. If you're in excess of 450 knots, it takes Arnold Schwarzenegger to turn the airplane. I had all I could do pulling to make it turn at about 500 knots. And the control column, which was made out of steel, was actually bending. I looked down and it had a little bit of a curvature to it, so I decided I better not break anything.
This glaring weakness could be exploited by Crusader pilots. At high speeds, the F-8 could turn as tight or tighter than the MiG-17 due to its sturdy airframe and hydraulically boosted control surfaces. But at low speeds, below 450 knots, the MiG-17 still reigned supreme. The key in a dogfight for any Crusader pilot was to keep the MiG at high speed. May 19, 1967, Crusader pilot Paul Spear has just downed one MiG-17 as the churning dogfight above Hanoi reaches a fever pitch. Lieutenant Phil Wood, who had been chasing the MiG, returns to the fight.
I mean, it's just surreal. You couldn't believe it. Surface air missile trails and the magenta pink explosions, the 57 millimeter, the dark black, and the gray 37 millimeter going off. I see MiGs on fire going down after having been shot down, and I see F-8 being shot down.
Wood speeds into the action, searching for a target.
The next thing you know, I hear the bullets coming by the canopy, and when they come by, they're breaking the sound barrier, and you hear the pops. And I turned and looked back, and there was a MiG-17 right on my tail.
Wood brakes hard left and lights his afterburner for extra speed. But in doing so, he crosses right through the MiG's sights. Two cannon shells explode directly behind his seat, blowing out some of the plane's most important electronics.
And that's where your avionics are, and that's where your navigation equipment, where your air conditioning is, because it's turning into a heated capsule now. And then it fought the engine, meaning it took some of those parts and stuff down into the intake, which got sucked into the engine. Now I've lost part of my engine power.
Wood is now in a high G left turn with the MiG-17. The speed of the turn is too high for the MiG-17, and the enemy pilot is forced to loosen up. This allows Phil Wood to get his nose inside and gain a firing angle. But there are so many Gs on the airplane, his Sidewinder missile will never be able to maintain lock.
So I was losing altitude to keep up my energy, and I kept getting some angles on him. And I finally, when I was almost around like 30 or 40 degrees from his tail, the stupid guy reversed course and was now running for his life. Well, he solved my problem.
The MiG's break from the spiral allows Wood to straighten out and take G off the airplane. His missile can now lock on.
And I'm sitting in the saddle at 2,000 yards, and I fired my missile. It took off out of the rail. It goes out, and it goes right through his tail, cuts off the tail.
Wood cruises by the stricken MiG.
I could see the color of his skin. I could see the patch on his left shoulder, could see his oxygen mask, and then he ejected. I saw him eject. He got seat separation from the airplane, but he didn't get seat separation from the seat, and he just plummeted to his death.
It's Phil Wood's first confirmed kill. The furball is winding down. Paul Spear and the rest of the Crusaders are running low on fuel and head home. Wood streaks toward the Gulf of Tonkin, 80 miles away. But his plane is in bad shape. His navigation equipment is out. He has no radio. And worst of all, he's slowly leaking fuel. If he's forced to ditch, he'll become a POW. And the North Vietnamese will show no mercy to an American pilot with a MiG kill under his belt. May 19, 1967. Lieutenant Phil Wood flies his wounded Crusader towards the Gulf of Tonkin. He knows he doesn't have enough fuel to make it all the way to his carrier. But luck is on his side. He spots the rest of the Crusader flight heading for a refueling plane. He matches speed with the tanker and guides the Crusader's retractable fuel nozzle into the refueling boom.
I plugged in and got 1,000 pounds. It was enough to get me out into the Gulf. So I just headed out into the Gulf. I said, if I find a carrier, I'm going to land on it. Doesn't matter which one. And sure enough, I ran across this carrier that was in the wind, recovering aircraft. The captain of that carrier saw me coming in the wrong side and saw the smoke coming out of my airplane. He knew F-8s didn't smoke.
The carrier's crew quickly wave off their own planes. They clear Wood for an emergency landing and anxiously wait on the deck.
When I landed and it got the arresting wire, all that fuel rushed forward, hit the burner cans, and the into my airplane blew up. But anyway, I got aboard. I didn't know what carrier was on, and I looked at the side number, and it had the number 63, and I knew I was aboard Kittiot. And what this young lieutenant didn't know is that 17 years later, I'd be the captain of that carrier.
In their first mission over Hanoi, the Crusaders have protected their bombers and downed 4 MiGs.
We get back to the ship, and everyone is kind of ecstatic about the MiG engagement. It was the first of the real big ones there. We had a very successful day in the air. That was the first big day for the Crusaders.
But the North Vietnamese can also claim some success. The Hanoi power plant survived. The Walleye was supposed to fly in a window and explode inside, but instead it struck the thick outside walls of the building. Also, Lieutenant Wood's plane was a total loss, and they'd shot down 2 Crusaders with ground fire. The last gunfighter proved itself an excellent combat plane, but at this point in the war, one-on-one encounters with MiGs remain rare. The North Vietnamese use their MiGs as just one part of a larger anti-aircraft system, including sophisticated Russian-built surface-to-air missiles and thousands of mobile anti-aircraft guns. Crusaders are often tasked with knocking out this air defense network.
The F-8 could carry quite a bomb load. It had 2 wing points where we put bomb racks. We tried to avoid that as much as possible because we wanted to be fighter pilots, but we had that capability.
But the Crusader was most often used as an escort, protecting ground attack aircraft like the A-4 Skyhawk. December 14, 1967, Air Wing 16, flying off the aircraft carrier Oriskany, is tasked with a unique mission. Drop mines into the Red River Delta, 40 miles southeast of Hanoi. Lieutenant Commander Dick Shafford, veteran F-8 Crusader pilot, escorts an A-4 Skyhawk bomber flown by Lieutenant Chuck Nelson. Shafford and Nelson streak into enemy airspace over Tai Binh. The North Vietnamese don't wait long to scramble fighters.
We heard on the channel 4 red bandits airborne from Bullseye, which meant there were 4 MiGs in the air coming toward us.
Shafford thinks the MiGs are headed for the main strike group, 15 miles away. But in fact, they're heading for him.
The calls kept coming, 4 red bandits at 20 miles, 10 miles. When it got down to 3 miles, then I was, shaking like a bridegroom.
Shafford braces for the fight. He rolls inverted, above the A4. It allows him to keep his airspeed up without overtaking the slower bomber. But while inverted, something catches Shafford's eye.
I saw something glisten over there, and I looked back at Chuck, and then I looked again, and 2 MiGs flew right between us.
The MiGs streak through and bank slowly left to come around on the A4's tail. They could be baiting Shafford for an ambush. He knows there are 2 other MiGs somewhere in the area. But he has no choice. He must engage the immediate threat. He kicks in his afterburner, noses down, and dives after the MiGs.
This was a setup for the beginning of so many air combat maneuvering flights that I did. Here the fight starts.
Ahead of him, the MiG leader pulls into a tight left turn. The move protects him, but his less experienced wingman can't keep up and drifts into Shafford's firing envelope.
And I got my nose on up, and it was a clear northern sky with the sun off to the west, and that brand new AIM-9D Sidewinder with a super coolant was just growling beautifully, and I fired out at about 1.25 miles. It just looked like a thing from a movie. It flew just under his right wingtip. And that's where it passed under without fusing. Flew off into the wilderness. And I could not believe what had happened at that point in time. It's like having a whole flock of ducks come over and you shoot and nothing falls.
The MiGs dive. Shafford sets up another shot. But suddenly, from 9 o'clock high, another MiG element is diving on him. It's the ambush Shafford was afraid of.
2 more 17s really had me in their gun sights and were coming down in a perfect run on me like this. Holy mackerel. And then it brought me back to focus. There's no more getting an easy kill, all that stuff. You're going to have to fight with these guys.
It's the setup to one of the longest dogfights ever recorded. While the average Vietnam dogfight lasted 45 seconds, Shafford relentlessly pursues 4 enemy MiGs for a gut-wrenching 10 minutes. December 14, 1967. 4 MiG-17s have ambushed an F-8 Crusader piloted by Richard Shafford. The 10-minute dogfight that is about to unfold will push Shafford to the limits of human endurance. As 2 of the MiGs dive in, Shafford rolls into a maximum 8G left turn to defeat the ambush. The MiGs are going too fast to match the turn and overshoot. 4 bandits are in the air. The situation is quickly unraveling. The A4 he was escorting has fled. And now Shafford faces 4-to-1 odds. He must play to his aircraft's strength.
And I just stood the Crusader on its tail and did what it does best, and that is just climb. Climb like hell. And I went over the top at about 25,000 feet and turned upside down to see what was down there.
The first pair of MiGs are here, in a descending left turn, trying to regain airspeed. The second pair are here, trying to climb to Schaffert's altitude. In his first move, he'll dive past the ascending MiGs, then attack the other pair, who are vulnerable targets given their low airspeed. Outnumbered but unafraid, Dick Schaffert noses down. The Crusader screams past the ascending MiGs at 450 knots. At 10,000 feet, he begins to pull out. The heavy G of the dive rips away his oxygen mask and microphone. He can no longer radio for help.
Just keep pulling on your face as you're doing this. And mine now was down over my chin, so I couldn't talk with anybody. I don't think I would have needed the microphone. If I had opened the canopy, they could have heard me.
Schaffert guts it out and pulls up on the first pair of MiGs 6 o'clock. The MiGs turn hard left, trying to shake the Crusader. Schaffert maneuvers for a Sidewinder missile shot. To gain a missile lock, his nose must be no more than 20 degrees off the MiG's tailpipe. He barrel rolls to the outside and then descends. In doing this, he gets in missile position without losing airspeed. Schaffert gets good tone on the Sidewinder and fires. But he never gets the chance to see if the missile hits its target. At that very instant, a stream of tracers snap over his canopy. The second pair of MiGs have now reversed their climb. Once again, they're diving on him from 8 o'clock high. The tables have turned. Schaffert is here. The second MiG element is here. He'll need to fly like a man possessed to escape another ambush.
MiG fights are in nanoseconds, not seconds, but nanoseconds. 1 second the guy is a dot in your canopy, and the next he's past you.
Instantly, Schaffert improvises a unique maneuver. He pitches the Crusader down, then rudders left, cutting under the MiG's turn. From the MiG's point of view, it's as if Schaffert simply disappears as he dives and cuts under them. Schaffert endures the grueling maneuver. The attack is derailed, but now he plummets toward the ground. He jams the stick back and lights his afterburner. Raw jet fuel sprays into the F-8's exhaust, doubling his thrust. He soars past the MiGs. The MiGs try to follow, but their weaker engines can't match the Crusader's rate of climb. They stall out below. Schaffert levels off at 25,000 feet, hoping for a quick break in the action. He scans the area once again. The stalled MiGs are recovering, still very much in the fight. He looks west, hoping to catch some sign of friendly planes. His hopes are dashed. Yet another pair of MiGs at 3 o'clock high. This time, MiG-21s coming right at him.
Well, I was, for a moment in time, kind of halfway frozen and said, what in the world is going on?
As Schaffert turns into them, they fire their infrared-guided ATOL missiles, a reverse-engineered copy of the American Sidewinder. 4 contrails streak towards the lone Crusader. None of the missiles lock on. They fly harmlessly over Schaffert's head. And as quickly as the MiG-21s arrive, they depart. It's a guerrilla tactic often employed by MiG-21s in Vietnam. MiG-21s are a rare commodity for the North Vietnamese, and they're used sparingly. In 1967, there are only 16 in their Air Force. Using their speed, they streak into the area, fire all their missiles, hoping to score a lucky kill, and streak out, avoiding any dogfights with American aircraft. For Dick Shafford, exhaustion from the physical strain from several minutes of high-G combat is starting to take its toll.
Put yourself in the cockpit of that F-8, subjecting yourself to positive and negative Gs, gray out, black out, grunting, straining against the physical oppression of many times the force of gravity. Your 20-pound head in a 5G environment suddenly weighs 100 pounds. But if you don't keep your head moving, you're probably going to die. That's what Dick Shafford did for 10 minutes.
But Shafford has sunk his teeth into the MiGs, and he's not letting go. The fight goes on. He shifts his attention to the MiG-17s, 10,000 feet below.
They were coming around underneath the position that I was, and this was my chance to make gunfighter mean something.
The MiG-17s are here. Shafford is above them. He can bank left and begin a dive on them. He'll gain tremendous energy in the dive, ensuring that he doesn't get locked in a low-speed turning fight. The MiG-17's strength. Shafford noses down and dives on the MiG element. They bank left, hoping to force an overshoot. Shafford must break up the MiG element. First, he will execute a barrel roll to the outside. Then, as he descends, he'll fire on the wingman. But instead of watching the missile to the target, he'll roll again, positioning himself on the MiG leader's tail. Shafford rolls. Then fires his last missile on the wingman. He rolls again. As he descends, he switches to guns. The wild maneuver works. The wingman is now out of the fight, and MiG leader is in Shafford's gun sight. Already in a high-G turn, Shafford tracks the MiG. He closes on him, 2,000 feet. He tightens his turn even more, leading the target.
I pressed the trigger and boom, boom. 7 rounds out of each gun, and the link broke.
The pull of G is so massive it has jammed all 4 of his cannons. The last gunfighter is now out of guns and missiles. A new mission emerges from the adrenaline rush of combat. Survival. Crusader pilot Richard Shafford has chased off 5 enemy MiG fighters. Now he's one-on-one against the MiG leader. But he's out of missiles, and his guns are jammed.
It did cross my mind that I'm not going to be shooting anybody out of the sky. But in this Crusader core thing that becomes so ingrained in you that you are better than anybody else. When you are in your Crusader, you're the king. And so I'm going to beat this guy just to show him I can beat him. No other reason. I'm just going to take him on like he was a student.
Shafford may not be able to kill his opponent, but he can instill a healthy dose of fear. With violent maneuvering, he'll try to intimidate the MiG into a tactical mistake, and then beat a hasty retreat. He's now on the MiG-6 in a tight left turn. Shafford breaks out of the turn. The MiG pilot seizes the opportunity and, for a fleeting moment, fires on him, but the tracers miss. Shafford goes vertical. MiG leader climbs after him. The MiG-17 and F-8 claw for altitude. Shafford runs out of airspeed at the top of his climb and noses over. The MiG does the same. At the bottom of the dive, they cross paths and climb again. As each pilot jockeys for position, they find themselves locked in a complex aerial maneuver, a vertical rolling scissors. Pilots describe it as a self-generating furball. In the vertical rolling scissors, each pilot rolls around the other while climbing and diving. In the climb, they lose airspeed and the slower aircraft inches closer to his enemy's 6 o'clock firing position.
I think we were thinking with the exact same mindset. Reverse it back around and get your nose behind the other guy. This is going to get slow real quick as you're going up like this. And if you get your nose just a skosh behind the other guy, you're going to shoot him out of the sky real quick.
They twist around each other over and over. Both pilots fly at the knife edge of endurance. This grueling fight has been going on for nearly 10 minutes, an eternity in the world of dogfighting.
I can almost sense his nose coming a little farther into me each time as he came around. And about the 5th or 6th time down this, on the downside of this vertical rolling scissors, I could see the next time up is going to be enough inside that his guns will probably cover me and he will be able to fire.
Schaffert must make a move now. They hit bottom on another scissors, and Schaffert abruptly rolls out. The MiG pilot is taken off guard, and Schaffert uses every bit of his 16,000 pounds of thrust, accelerating away from the MiG at treetop level.
As I look back over my shoulder now, this guy had finished his turnaround, was coming at me, and then all of a sudden he pulled up like this, and I could see the plan view of his airplane, and he was back about 1.5 miles. So he was calling it quits too.
Dick Schaffert's dogfight is a nearly flawless example of skillful maneuvering and maximizing the capabilities of an aircraft. Its every move is studied by fighter pilots today.
It's really ironic to me that arguably the most noteworthy dogfight of the Vietnam War did not result in anybody getting shot down. But considering that he was able to fly home and land back aboard the Oriskany that evening was a victory in itself.
North Vietnamese pilots had tangled with a rare breed of fighter pilot.
They probably had a bottle of cold beer and said, "We just met the biggest maniac in the United States Navy." Because Schaffert just was a wild man. He never gave him a chance. Even when he was out of weapons, he was still at him.
In the Vietnam War, the F-8 Crusader recorded a stellar win-loss record, bringing down 6 MiGs for every Crusader lost. But ground fire, SAMs, and accidents began to whittle down their numbers. By the late 60s, it was slowly displaced by the F-4 Phantom.
This was Cold War time, and they were looking at the threat from the Russian bombers. The Phantom had a bigger top speed and could get there quicker, could climb out faster. The F-4, quite frankly, was a better airplane for the mission.
There were over 1,200 Crusaders built. But in 1987, the last F-8 was decommissioned from the U.S. fleet. The Crusader's success in dogfighting had a long-term effect on naval aviation. It was known as the last gunfighter, but it wasn't. Missiles did not supplant guns as the dogfighter's weapon of choice, as military planners had thought. All future Navy planes would be fitted with guns. Even the Crusader's rival, the F-4 Phantom. And close-in, turn-and-burn flying continues to be taught at Top Gun. Dogfighting tactics so skillfully executed by the F-8 Crusader and its pilots.
I never knew a Crusader pilot that had fear of another airplane. Fear of missiles? You damn right betcha. Or fear of a guy with a lucky golden BB, like John McCain says? Yeah. But not another airplane, and that's the Crusader legacy. To be able to fight with a clear head because you don't fear anything.